Hello, Buckeye fans. I'm Patrick Murphy here with Steve Hellwagon at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. We just got done talking with Ryan Day after the college football playoff rankings came out, the final rankings, and the bracket. Buckeyes, I'm sure as you all know by now, number 8 in the playoff bracket. They will face Tennessee December 21st, a night game at Ohio Stadium.
How about that?
Everybody gets what they want at the biggest time of the year. Let's just start with that, Steve. Your initial thoughts on the matchup and getting that opportunity to play a night game, and I assume this is the latest night game in Ohio Stadium history. I can't imagine they've played later, but
well, it's the first time ever they're going to play a game in December. Yeah. So yeah, that in really last year when they played, what was it, Michigan State in mid-November, that was the latest previous night game to this one, as I understand it. So yeah, it's a lot of new frontiers. I was pleasantly surprised the tickets are starting at $100 and going up from there. I figured if they had priced themselves out of existence at like $200, that they would have struggled to fill, the shoe, given the circumstances following the last game. It was funny that Kirk Herbstreit during the selection show made the comment that maybe Ohio State would have been better off to go on the road and avoid the fans, who are probably still upset about the Michigan loss, and that on the very first time they don't convert a third down, there's going to be boos and all this other stuff. But Coach, kind of smiled about that and said, "No, we're used to that. That happens after every 3 and out. We get that at Ohio Stadium." And then they really are looking forward to playing a home game in the playoff. It'll be a historic game, first of all, something everybody will remember forever. The very first time that this happened, and that he expects the atmosphere to be nothing short of electric at Ohio Stadium for this game. And I would agree with him. I think that, to have Tennessee, who's never visited Ohio Stadium before, the teams have only played one time before, and it was in the January 1st, 1996 in the Citrus Bowl. It was interesting. Both teams were ranked number 4 in the country. They were tied in the AP poll, the last poll of the regular season. And it was a different time that, instead of getting like at-large berths to go play in the Fiesta Bowl or Sugar Bowl or somewhere else, all those bids were kind of taken, and the Citrus Bowl had this amazing top 5 matchup fall in its lap. Peyton Manning was only a sophomore, and he really didn't do a whole lot. It poured down rain. It started raining the day before at like 3 p.m, and it rained hard, for an entire 24-hour period. Ohio State lost the game 20-14. There was a bad fumble at the end, and one of those game could have gone either way. 2 really good teams, and now 29 years later, we'll see a rematch finally, Ohio State and Tennessee. And Tennessee's been a really good program with Josh Heupel since he's gotten obviously to Knoxville. It was kind of a revolving door of coaches after Phil Fulmer left there in the early 2000s after he had won a national championship. It's just been, one guy after another that couldn't get anything done. And, of course, the previous coach had some NCAA issues too, but Heupel came in and has cleaned things up. And, Iamaleava, his quarterback, is a pretty good player. And it's going to be on here in, what will that be, 13 days, right over there at Ohio Stadium. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, crazy that it's such a quick turnaround for something like this. Coach Day was talking about, the time in between the Michigan game last week was kind of getting over that result, starting to practice a little bit. I think they started practice on Wednesday before the weekend. And then this week is kind of the weird week, right? Because next week you're in the game week, and it's basically just the normal game prep, and you're getting ready for Tennessee. I think fortunately for the Buckeyes, this matchup was one that a lot of people predicted. So Ryan Day said they'd already taken a look at Tennessee. I'm sure Tennessee had started to do the same with Ohio State. He talked about the fast-paced offense, the way that they like to stretch you both horizontally and vertically, which will certainly challenge this defense. I think the only team that was really able to do that this year was Oregon, and we know how that went. Different game, but this one will obviously be at home. As you kind of look ahead into this game, the defensive line is another. What gives you the most concern from an Ohio State perspective?
Yeah, I'm just calling up a little bit about Tennessee because I have not, even in this hour, had a lot of time to schedule it up or to look at it. But again, I think their offense has been something that's been very eye-opening with Heupel there, that they have put a lot of points and picked up a lot of yards. So I think that's something you got to be cognizant of. But Coach Day did mention that their defensive front has been outstanding. And I know that they have one defensive end with 11 sacks. And
That's a lot.
yeah, and so they have done a lot of good things over on that side of the ball. Actually, their Pierce had 7.5 sacks, so I'm off a little bit on that.
Still
They have DBs McCoy with 4 and Brooks with 3 in terms of interceptions. So they've got some guys that can play. Obviously, their wide receiver. It's weird. They spread it out to a lot of different guys. They've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different players have scored touchdowns on receptions, so that's pretty good. Running game, I'm leaving not a huge runner, only 311 yards for him, but they have a running back, Sampson, 1,485 yards, 22 touchdowns in 12 games. That's pretty good. Dylan Sampson, 5'11", 200, junior, and he really came into his own this year. It looks like was not a 1,000-yard rusher previous to the season, 1,400 yards this year. So he's been outstanding as well. So I think you have to kind of take all this into account and understand. I mean, these two teams are kind of on parallel paths. They were both right there in the hunt for their respective conference championships, and so well regarded that they were obviously playoff teams, no doubt, regardless of not making their conference championship situation. So in terms of the schedule, I know they played NC State in a game, I think it was at the Bristol Speedway back in mid-September, and they won that game 51-10. And I think that was a game that caught a lot of people's attention to say, okay, Tennessee's legitimate, because people thought NC State was kind of a borderline top 25 team to start the year, and I think they ended up 6-6, 7-5, something like that. And Tennessee basically came out of the box, roaring with that result. Let's see, they beat Oklahoma. This was not a good performance at Oklahoma, 25-15. They won the game, and that's about all you could really say for it. But, Oklahoma, what you can say for them, of course, they beat Alabama there later on, is typically Oklahoma's going to be a pretty good defensive team. So they were able to kind of keep some clamps a little bit on what Tennessee would do. And then the following week, it kind of hit rock bottom. They went on the road and played Arkansas and lost 19-14. And that was kind of a black mark. And honestly, in hindsight and in the final analysis, that's what kept them out of the SEC championship game, was that they blew a game, to an Arkansas team that, obviously was not very good this year. Did beat Alabama. And that game, of course, was at home. And they have a good history here in recent years of playing Alabama tough, particularly in Knoxville, and they certainly did this year. It was 24-17. They won that game, so I think that's an impressive game for them. Alabama, as we know, was a borderline, were they in the playoff, were they not in the playoff? They're the number 12 or 13 team in the country. Let's just leave it at that. And then as you scroll on down, they went to Georgia and lost 31-17, and that was a tough one.
I watched that together.
Yeah, Iamaleava did not play particularly well in that game. And so, yeah, it was that was a rough one for them. And obviously, Georgia was starting to put the pieces together at that point to what they became the top team in the SEC by the end. Final two games, UTEP 56-0, no surprise there. And then their rivalry game, so to speak. And there were a lot of people that thought Vanderbilt could spring an upset in that last game, because Vanderbilt had one of its best seasons in forever. And Tennessee went into Nashville and took the 36-23 win. It was a closer game, maybe, I think, than the score indicated. But to me, I think for them to go on the road in those circumstances, still hoping, maybe that something would fall their way. But, it was not meant to be for them to get to the SEC championship. And yet, they are just like Ohio State. Didn't win their conference championship, but they have the opportunity. And you could see Ryan Day's eyes light up in here today when he said, we have a chance to get on a roll, win 4 games in a row, and win the whole thing.
Yep.
And, man, what would that mean for a team like Tennessee or a team like Ohio State that, again, you wouldn't call them dark horses because they're both top 10 teams, but you know, to not win a conference championship, but to go through this playoff gauntlet and maybe do it, that would be awesome.
Last thing, the big discussion, I think, is how Ohio State responds to losing to Michigan. Obviously, we saw a couple years ago against Georgia, Buckeyes come out and handle that well. Obviously, you lose the game by 1 point. You can talk about all the things that happened during that game. How do you feel like this team is equipped to kind of bounce back from that and, as you were just talking about, potentially make this playoff run?
That's a really hard question.
Yeah, that's why I put it on you.
I think it helps that the game is at home, and I think that to have, you know, they're only giving Tennessee 3,500 tickets, which to me is an astounding number. I would think that number would have been 5,000 to 8,000. You know, because I mean, honestly, that's not, and maybe 3,500 is a standard number for these playoff games on home.
Yeah, I would assume.
But by the same token, you know, they want to sell the tickets, and they're trying to sell as many tickets as they possibly can, as soon as they possibly can, to have the stadium filled. And they know Ohio State has X number of season ticket holders who, it sounds like, will all have the opportunity to purchase their tickets for this game, and really not at a terrible price either. I saw one friend of mine had an email where his tickets where he sits are $117. He said, I mean, that's cheaper than Michigan. That's cheaper than probably Nebraska was. So, I mean, but the flip side of this is the game right now, if you look 13 days out in the future, the high temperature is like 38, the low temperature is 26. So it's going to be a chilly night at Ohio Stadium. We have no idea about precipitation. Could it be snowing, sleeting, raining? You just don't know at this time of the year. You could get anything. And, you know, we know Tennessee, weren't they? I think they were somewhere and they were mad that their heaters weren't working on the sideline or something. I got news for you, boys. It's going to be freaking cold up here when y'all come up here, up 71. Come on up, come up 75 to 71, come on up to Columbus High, because it's going to be cold. But, you know, great tradition at Tennessee, and Ohio State and Tennessee were supposed to play a home and home at some point, and it got canceled for some reason, and it's too bad because that is one of the great traditions in college football is Tennessee football. And I think to have Ohio State and Tennessee finally renewing this, you know, after 29 years to get a chance to play one another. This is what the playoff is bringing us.
Yep.
Indiana, Notre Dame is kind of interesting. SMU, Penn State. You know, if you forget the fact that SMU was kind of a group of 5 team, you know, just 6 weeks ago, and now they're
not even making TV money in their conference.
Champion. Yeah, they're paying the ACC. They were paid to play in the ACC this year.
And almost won the whole thing.
Yeah, and so a lot of unique. What is it? Clemson is playing Texas. I mean, different brands that we never see play each other are going to get to play each other, and then the semifinals are going to be fire as well. So, hey, our quarterfinals too. So, you know, like he said, don't plan on playing Oregon just yet. Let's get through Tennessee, and then, you know, take it one game at a time.
Yep. And we'll be there along the way, however far it goes. We'll have plenty more on this game over the next couple of weeks. We're looking forward to it. I think you guys are too. So, you know, as Ryan just said, now there's a target. We know who Ohio State's playing now, and we can focus in on that. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We're going to get out of here, get some work done, but appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Coach Day's video is already up on the site, so you can watch a half hour. Ton of great questions today about Tennessee, and even some reporters from remotely were asking questions as well, so some good stuff.
Yep. Check that out on Bucknuts. Thanks, guys.